Hello everyone, welcome to the Geoecologist. I'm Dr. Krishnanand, and in this session we are going to learn about the Earth and the various concepts related to the shape of the Earth, latitude and longitude, time zones and several other concepts. So before we go ahead, please do like and subscribe to our channel and don't forget to press the bell icon for the updates. So now, after we have learnt about various concepts related to universe, related to galaxies, solar system, different planets, let's learn about the various facts related to Earth and understand the geographic concepts. So what is its diameter? The equatorial diameter of Earth is 12,756 kilometer. Polar diameter is 12,714 kilometers. What is its mass? The mass is 5.97 into 10 to the power 24 kg. So that's important here. Now, let's talk about the latitude and longitude. So, latitudes and longitudes are basically what? They are imaginary lines and they are used to determine the location of a particular place on the Earth. So, it is important for the locational aspect. So, when there is an intersection of one latitude and one longitude, this particular point is supposed to be the location of a particular place or a particular person on the Earth. That's important. For example, if we say what is the location of New Delhi, it is 28 degree north and 77 degree east. And when we say 77 degree east, so this is 77 degree east. So this is the location of New Delhi. That's how we find the location using latitude and longitude. Now, the next question. What is the shape of the Earth? The shape of the Earth is called geoid. So that's important. Now, what we were talking in latitude and longitude, let's understand in the terms of image. So in this image, what we see here is, this is our equator, that is the 0 degree imaginary line. From equator, if we move towards north, so at 23.5 degree north, we have the Tropic of Cancer, and 23.5 degrees south, we have Tropic of Capricorn. So that is important. Then furthermore, if we see 66.5 degree north, that is called Arctic Circle, and 66.5 degrees south, it is called Antarctic Circle. So these are important terms in terms of latitude. Now if we talk about longitude, what is important? These meridians that are running from pole to pole. So these 90 degrees are supposed to be the polar axis. Basically, this is the equatorial axis and this is the 90 degree on this equatorial axis, that is the polar axis. So now, like equator is the 0 degree for latitude for the parallels, for the longitudes it is called prime meridian. The 0 degree meridian is called prime meridian that runs from pole to pole. So these are basic terminologies related to longitude and latitude. Now let's look at further that latitude has certain important characteristics. What is that? As the Earth is slightly flattened at poles, we understand there are certain important facts. So what we see is the variation between the latitudes. What is that? The distance variation. So at equator, when we see, it is about 68.704 miles between two latitudes. Then at 45 degree, it further goes to this particular distance, that is 69.054 miles, and at the poles it is maximum, that is about 69.407 miles. Now let's look further that what is the average value. So the average value is supposed to be 69 miles, that is about 111 kilometers between two consecutive latitudes. So that is important. But if you understand the trend, remember it keeps on increasing as we go towards the poles from the equator. So that's important here. For conversion, must remember that 1 mile is about 1.607 kilometers. So that's how you can convert it into kilometers as well. Now, looking at the concept of longitude, so it is an angular distance measured in degrees along the equator, east or west, of the prime or the first meridian. So that we already understand. So if this is an Earth, this is what we talk is about the meridians of longitude. So this particular distance, one meridian is away from the other meridian. So do you know where this zero meridian or prime meridian? So it was decided in 1884 by international agreement that the Royal Astronomical Observatory at Greenwich, that is near London, this is considered to be as the 0-degree meridian. That is the prime meridian that we say, the 0-degree meridian. So that is important, the Greenwich Observatory at London. So we observe that right from 0 eastward as well and westward as well, we find 180 degrees. So that is important because 180 degree is the semicircle on both the sides. So we find eastward 180 and westward 180 degrees out of the total 360 degrees. So that's important here. Now, next important thing is the positionality of the Earth. So location with respect to the other celestial bodies. So what does celestial mean? Basically in Hindi we say khagoliya pind. So in Latin the word celestis basically means heaven. So when we say celestial bodies, it means heavenly bodies. That is those bodies, that is those objects related to the outer space as observed in astronomical studies. So the first important thing is the concept of geocentrism that is related to this. So the Earth was once believed to be the center of universe. That's why it is called geocentric. It means geo, that is Earth is the center of the universe. So the structure of solar system or the universe in which Earth is assumed to be at the center, that is called geocentric theory. So let's understand further, going a little bit into the historical aspect. So in 6th century before Common Era, Anaximander, a Greek scholar, proposed that a cylindrical Earth was the center of everything. So the first idea was not spherical Earth, rather Anaximander talked about cylindrical Earth, which was supposed to be in the shape of a cylinder somewhat that we see, right? So this was supposed to be the center of everything else that is in the universe. So that was where the concept started. Furthermore, what we see, Pythagoras, the famous mathematician during the same era, proposed that Earth was circular. So he talked about circular Earth by his observation of eclipses. So that was important. Coming to the 4th century before Common Era, after almost 200 years of this idea of this circular Earth, Plato proposed that Earth was a sphere. So here in the 4th century, first scholar to propose that concept of spherical Earth was Plato. He talked about the stationary center of the universe was Earth. That is the origin of this geocentrism, the geocentric concept. Further, we see that in 2nd century, the Roman geographer, Roman scholar, that is Ptolemy, in his work Almagest, that is Ptolemaic model that we say, Almagest basically means the greatest. So it was the greatest work talking about astronomy. So Ptolemy in his work, that is Almagest, proposed this concept of geocentric universe. So the concept was coming right from Anaximander, but gradually in the form of geocentrism, the final geocentric concept theory was developed by Ptolemy. So that is important here. Now, another important term is equant. So what is an equant? Ptolemy developed the equant to describe motion and orbits of the planets. So basically talking about how different planets revolve, rotate, what are their motions. It was important concept that was developed, that is called equant. It was basically a geometrical tool located near center of planet's orbit. So it was somewhat like a pivot along which the planets revolve or move. It causes it to move at a uniform angular speed in a retrograde motion. So that was important. Now what is this term retrograde motion? Let's understand. A retrograde motion is basically a slow down movement, that is move backwards and then move forwards again. So something that is now slowing down, it is moving back again and then again rotating, moving back again, then again rotating, something of that. So a retrograde motion, when we say, it is basically that motion that slows down, move backwards and then again moves further forward again. So this concept of retrograde motion related to the geometrical tool, that is equant, was given in the Ptolemy's work to explain the motion of these celestial bodies. And remember, this geocentric theory remained accepted for about next 1500 years until the concept of Galileo Copernicus came in the modern era. So now let's look into the 16th century work. Nicholas Copernicus, in his book on the revolutions of heavenly spheres. Now remember Nicholas Copernicus' work on the revolutions of heavenly spheres. This particular work challenged the geocentric theory that was proposed in his work by Ptolemy. Copernicus talked about another concept that was heliocentrism. So from geocentrism, the concept was now brought towards heliocentrism, that is the sun-centrism, sun-centric concept. So an astronomical model developed by Nicholas Copernicus, published in 1543, heliocentrism has been described as a cosmological model in which sun is assumed to be at the center or near the central point of the universe. That is important here. So it displays the geocentric model of the Ptolemy. Another important term related to this is epicycle. So what is epicycle? Let's understand. Copernican model replaced Ptolemy's equant circles with more epicycles. So the concept of epicycles replaced the concept of equant. So this epicycle, basically coming from ancient Greek, literally means upon the circle. Epi is above or upon the circle, meaning circle moving on another circle. So that was interesting concept. So it is a geometric model used to explain variations in speed and in direction of the different celestial objects. So another important concept is Galileo affair. So let's understand what kind of affair are we talking about. So it is a sequence of events beginning around 1610 to 1633 where Galileo versus the Roman Catholic Church happened. So what happened in this affair? Let's understand. So we'll learn that Galileo went on to propose this theory of tides in 1616, that is early 17th century, and the comet part in 1619, solely based on his own ideas, observation of the outer space. So he argued that tides were the evidence for the motion of the earth. So remember, he related the motion of the earth to the tides. The theory of relativity by Albert Einstein eliminated these concepts later on, but earlier at that time Galileo said that tides occur because of the motion of the earth. Now, furthermore, we should understand that Earth's rotation is gradually slowing down. So at approximately what speed? At 17 milliseconds per 100 years. And at this pace, after 140 million years, what will happen? Length of a day will increase to 25 hours. That is now 24 hours. So that is an important fact to remember. Now, Earth is only planet not named. Remember, Earth is the only planet in the solar system that has not been named after any god, because all the other planets refer to some kinds of gods or goddesses' name. The Earth is the densest planet in the solar system, and remember, the average density of the Earth is 5.52 grams per cubic centimeter. So that's another fact to remember. Let's understand some things related to the geological time scale. So what is the age of the Earth? Age of the Earth is considered to be the same, that is about 4.6 billion years, and remember, a billion year is about 10 to the power 9 years in terms of unit of time. So ages are abbreviated from Latin. How? Let's understand. That is GA, that is giga annum, is a billion years. MA, that is mega annum, that is a million years, and KA, that is kilo annum, is 1,000 years. So remember, whenever you see this word GA, MA and KA written, it basically means giga annum, mega annum and kilo annum. What is that? Billion, million, thousand. So that is how we write the units in terms of time. So the broadest of the framework in geological time is called eon. Then what we have is era. Then what we have is period. In the period, there is further classification, that is epoch, and then age. So this is entirely the classification that you can see here as well. So eon, era, period, epoch, and further what we see is the age classification. In short, we can remember it like this, like double E and P. So what we see here is the beginning, that is about again 4.6 billion years, and then further we travel all the history all the way through various events and further reach to this particular place where we see the modern human beings, that is about 0.12 mega annum, that means million years. That's important again. So now let's learn about Meghalayan age. So what is this? Let's understand. Meghalayan age is the onset of which was marked by a mega drought event. So it was a time when there was a huge amount of drought situation existing that crushed a number of civilizations worldwide. So although evidence is found in Mamluk cave, that is in Meghalaya, that's why it is known as Meghalayan age, the evidence has been found there, and the middle phase of Holocene will be referred to as North Grippian, that runs from 8300 years ago to the start of Meghalayan age, that is about 4200 years ago. So that's important here. Now key terms to remember is here Greenlandian age is basically 11,700 years to 8,300 years around. That is began when the last ice age ended, and then further the world started warming up, and North Grippian started from 8,300 to this 4,200 years. That is began after abrupt global cooling started from the Greenlandian age. So this is important term to remember in this particular way. Now, after we have looked at the geological time scale, let's understand about certain more concepts related to the Earth. So what causes seasons on the Earth? Let's understand this question. So this particular tilt that we see in the axis from this 90 degree, that is about 23.5 degree of this tilt. This is important with respect to its orbital plane, and that is one of the major reasons that produces seasons on Earth. So what we observe here is further that what happens, solar insolation which is received on the surface of the Earth is different at different latitudes, at different angle. So what happens, because of this tilt, different places on Earth have different seasons because they receive this solar insolation in a differential manner. So that is why this axis tilt is important for the seasons on the Earth. There can be another multiple choice question that Earth's rotation is responsible for which of the following activities. So let's list all the activities here. First is the day and night, then is standardized time zones, then we have Coriolis force, then we have tides, then we have magnetism of the Earth, and further solstice and equinoxes. Now, Coriolis force is responsible for deflection of the winds in the northern and southern hemisphere. It is explained by Ferrel's law, the law that states if a body moves in a direction on the Earth's surface, there is a deflection force arising from the rotation of the Earth. That is called Ferrel's law. So, what is the direction of deflection? Remember, it is right in the northern hemisphere, left in the southern hemisphere. So, that is important. Now, this concept of solstice, it is important as the word itself is sol, which means sun, and sister is to stand still. So solstice is that particular time of the year when sun stands still. But where? So let's understand. In the northern hemisphere, the June solstice, that is the summer solstice, demarcates astronomical beginning of summer season, right? And then it is the day with the most daylight in the year. So that's important. Equinoxes are another concept. The word itself comes from equus, that is equal, or nox, that is meaning night. So those time of the year when night is equal to the day length. So when astronomers define equinox as the moment of the Earth's equator on its axis passes the same plane of the sun's equator. Now let's understand this through the diagram. So in terms of solstice, what we have is December 21 and this June 21. So June 21 and December 21 are those times which we call winter and summer solstice, alright, where sun is constant, right? Remember, then equinox is on September 23rd and vernal equinox, that is we also known as spring equinox, in March 21st. So that is important here. Now another question that is important here is that do you know when our planet seasons change? Astronomically, our planet's season change on 4 particular days in a year. So that is what we have seen, 2 solstices and 2 equinoxes. That's important. Then we have another concept of standard time zones. So what is this standard time and what are these time zones? Let's understand. Most of the countries adopt their standard time from central meridian of their countries. Alright, the meridians are important here. So both Canada and USA have 5 time zones. Remember, 5 different time zones. What are those? The Atlantic, the Eastern, the Central, the Mountain and the Pacific. So remember, these 5 time zones are important in US and Canada. Further, do you know what is the difference between the local time of Atlantic and Pacific coast? This is about 5 hours of difference. So 2 different coasts, Atlantic and Pacific coast, and the time differences of 5 hours. So USSR earlier had 11 time zones before its disintegration. So that was the highest. And right now Russia has 9 time zones. So this is the world highest in terms of number of time zones in a same country. Now another concept related to the meridian is this concept of international dateline. So what is it? Let's understand. IDL, that is international dateline, is roughly based on meridian 180-degree longitude. Alright, it is roughly down the middle of the Pacific Ocean, halfway around the world from the Greenwich meridian. So it's 180-degree longitude. So what happens when we cross the international dateline? Now remember this concept, it's going to be interesting. When we cross the international dateline from west to east, so it basically means we are crossing this 180-degree from west to east. We are going this way. If we go towards east, what will happen? We subtract a day. It basically means if it is here 30, it will be 29 here. So that is what we do when we go from west to east. That's important here. And from east to west, if we travel, if we come from this part to this part, then we have to add the day. So if it is 29th of that month here, it will be 30th crossing this particular longitude. So adding and subtracting a day is important in terms of where we are going from which particular side to which particular side. So the question is time travel possible? The only way to do time travel on Earth is crossing this international dateline. So how very interesting. Crossing the international dateline is one of the major rare thrills that one should experience. How? Let's see. Passing over the Pacific Ocean in the right direction, that is eastward. What we do here is, this is the international dateline what we see here, and what we observe is here is Monday and here is Sunday. So if we travel on Monday from here to this place, we land here on Sunday. So basically we are going back into the time. So that's interesting how you can travel across the international dateline and say that you have become a time traveler on Earth itself. So that's the interesting concept. Now another thing that is related to this international dateline is that it is not a straight line. Why? Because it is having these curves at particular places in the mid-Pacific region. Why? Let's understand. It has mid-Pacific curves at these islands, that is Bering Strait, Fiji, Tonga. This was done to prevent confusion of day and date in some of the island groups. Alright, so that's important. And which are these islands? These are islands of the Oceania. So we call them Oceania, like the islands are named Polynesia, Melanesia, Micronesia. So Oceania is a region made up of these thousands of islands group in the Central and South Pacific Ocean. Now at the end, let's talk about Indian Standard Time. So how is it? The Indian government has accepted the meridian 82.5 degree east, that is for the standard time. That is 5 hours 30 minutes ahead of Greenwich Mean Time. So GMT plus 5:30, that is important. So London GMT and India, the difference in time is plus 5 hours 30 minutes. So if London it is 10, you have to add 5 hours 30 minutes to the London time to find the same time in India, that what is at the same time. And apart from that, there is one more interesting concept, that is Chai Bagan time. This was established during the British time. So British colonialists 150 years ago introduced this Chai Bagan time or the Bagan time. It is a time schedule observed by the tea planters spatially, which was 1 hour ahead of the Indian Standard Time. This was to regulate the timing for the tea planters specifically. So the chai bagan time used to run 1 hour ahead of the Indian Standard Time. So now let's look at the map of India and see here that this is 82.5 degree east longitude that passes through this part of India. So the question arises that standard meridian of India, that is 82.5 degree east longitude, passes through which of these states in India? What are those states where this line passes? So remember the name of these states: Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. In short, you can remember AMUCO. So at the end, now just take a summary of certain terms to remember. The first term is syzygy. So what is this syzygy? When the sun, moon and the earth are in a straight line, that is called syzygy. Then aphelion and perihelion. The sun is at maximum distance, that is called aphelion, and perihelion is when the sun and the earth is at a minimum distance, that is in perimeter. So that's important in perihelion. Then sundogs. What are these sundogs? It is called parahelia or maxsun. It is generally formed as sunlight is reflected by hexagonal plate-like ice crystals. So where there are ice crystals and the sunlight is further reflected through that, there are sundogs that are formed because of this reflection of light. That is also known as maxsuns. Apart from that, Ophiuchus. What is this concept of Ophiuchus? Let's understand. It is large constellations straddling the celestial equator. That is serpent bearer, also considered as 13th zodiac sign. So it is also known as Serpentarius. So Ophiuchus is basically a large constellation, alright, that is supposed to be the celestial equator, alright. So that's why it is important. And at the last, we have another term, that is Hydra. It is the largest constellation covering 3.16% of the night sky. So Hydra is the largest constellation and has at least 68 stars visible with the naked eye. So these are certain terminologies that you may remember, and many times it can help you in answering multiple choice questions. So now, when we have learned about the Earth, its various characteristics and various other important aspects like latitude and longitude and further concepts of international dateline and several other concepts, now it's the time that we'll look towards the concept of physical geography and human geography. So in the lectures to come, we'll be talking about various concepts related to the physical geography of the world as well as India, and also human geography of the world as well as India. So stay safe, stay tuned, and all the best wishes for the preparation.